day 1 of the June 98 7-day retreat in Springwater. If for any reason you can't hear right or don't feel in the right place, you feel free to move your mats for the talk and then put them back later. During the first talk of a retreat, we usually question what is right listening, open listening. Can there be such a thing as fresh listening? And please not to assume this is going to be the same talk as the one you heard last time about listening. I mentioned it, the same thing recently in Sweden, saying that when one hears the speaker say this first talk is about new listening, that he felt like tuning out. I've heard that one before, 2 years ago. But since it was mentioned that this may come up in the mind, quite unnoticed maybe, I've heard this before, why listen? Since this was mentioned in the talk, he noticed it, and noticed that the mind had begun to drift off. And in that noticing, it was right here again. So that's the amazing thing about pointing things out to each other, that it may bring about a wakeful listening to what's going on. Waking up from the constant dream of commenting or being someplace else. Going over things that happened in the past. Or just random stuff occupying the mind. So, first talk about open listening. How do we listen to a talk? How do we listen to each other? Not just during a talk, but since there's a talk going on right now, we'll use that to look and listen and aware what's going on. Is there expectation in the mind? What one wants to hear, what she's going to say, what one does not want to hear. Is that going on? Not so much the content of the expectation, but the mode that the mind is in when it expects something, which is not being here. With the heat and a little bit of cool air and birds calling and breathing. The body quite hot or wet. Maybe an ache in the knee or shoulder or back. When there's expecting something from somebody, we're not with what's already here. It's so simple, and yet seems so difficult to come by, because this mind is constantly expecting something good to happen or something painful to take place, something that one is afraid of, recoils from, or wants to go toward, looking forward to something which creates noticeable energies in the body. Looking forward to something good to be said, good to be heard. something inspirational. I'm looking forward to an inspirational lecture, and that looking forward to energizes the body before something has even been said. That is so. It's not said theoretically, it's said from experience. Every one of us can watch it for themselves. And it's not quite this no mode of just being here. With whatever energy there is, the energy changes. When this body does not depend so much on looking forward to, expecting, thinking pleasant things or unpleasant things. It's the same thing, it's the other side of the same coin. Dreading something to happen. And therefore not at ease with a body already tensing in expectation of something dreadful to happen. To let it be felt. Together with airplane motor or whatever that is. It's probably a mower. The brain hasn't put up with this word airplane, it's something else, so it scans around a little bit what it could be. The calling, twittering of birds. Such quietness in presence. And yet the moment a thought arises of something wonderful or something frightening to happen, the body is instantly affected. And with that, the listening. Why is it so? Because it is so. I don't know why. You could explain it physiologically, anatomically, electrochemically. Currents set up in anticipation of pleasure or pain affect the listening and looking. It's like a closing up and dwelling with the thought mode, the imagined, projected world that we live in. Almost all the time. Almost all the time. It's nobody's fault. This is one thing. Let me say it from the very beginning. There is no fault finding in this work. There's a lot of fault finding in our conditioning. We live that way. Who did it? Whose fault is it? I've got to straighten them out. But the essence of this work, as I see it, as I live it, is not to find fault, but to understand. To understand each other superficially, in between, and in depth. So thoroughly that the thought of fault is seen as totally irrelevant, not applying to this looking and listening and beginning to understand how we operate, not from theory, not from projection, but from observation for ourselves and each other in an open listening, which is so hard to come by, so precious, but it is possible for every one of us here and everywhere. We said last night, it's a wonderful thing to have a building with so much glass, so many windows, except for the other side of the heat. There's never an advantage without a disadvantage. But so much in touch when the weather changes, as it does often in this area, particularly this year, every month seems to be like April, changing from, well, we'll experience it. So one feels so close. The meadow so beautifully mowed. Flowers, the trees, the hills. This morning, a sky without a cloud except this orange light in the east. Still, when you step out of the house, it's different. It's open. Is it open when you step out of the house? Or do you step out of the house and stay right in this chamber, in this solitary chamber of our worries and gripes and grudges and remembrances and desires and hopes? It's a tight quarters. So when you step outside on the deck or outside of the reception room and look around, are you really here, or are you still in the little chamber of worries? It's not a blame, it's not a fault. To notice it and wonder about it. And take another look, take another listen, another touch, another breath in the open. So we're not asking, be without expectation as you come to a talk. This is our usual way of hearing things because we're conditioned to be told, to drop the bad and adopt the good. It's our conditioning since we were born, maybe before then. Whereby what's considered good and bad is very arbitrary. We can look into this sometime, whether there's a good which is not arbitrary, not dependent on conditioning, on conditioned values. We'll look at that at some later time. But here in talking, in examining and questioning, it's not a matter of eliminating or overcoming the bad, the wrong, and acquiring the good, the right, but to discover how we are. Actually, this moment, moment to moment, of thinking and emoting and tensing and stressing and wanting, and fearing of not getting what we want, of wanting right to be done and seeing the wrong being done, and the emotions that arise in a conditioned body that has been trained to at least think it's doing the right thing and try to condemn what it thinks is the wrong thing. And the incredible reaction that the body is able to produce when the thought arises, this is wrong, they are doing wrong, or she is not doing right. It's like observe it, how quickly the body pours out chemicals that affect the heart, the stomach, the blood rushing to the head. And what of an instant of open listening in such a condition? One has to wake up to it first, that this is going on. The surges through the body of anger or self-righteousness or protectiveness or wanting or fearing surges throughout the body, which affect heavily the perception of ourselves and each other and the woods and the little bugs buzzing around. So where are we right now, this moment? thoughts, considerations, reflections, and the birds, and a bit of cool air. Maybe you're too far away from an open door. Whatever, it's very pleasant. But if it's heat and sweat, then it's that. And a moment of listening to words being said without the judging mode in operation. Judging mode very deeply ingrained, just as the expectation mode. Judging. And by judging, do we gain something? Do we feel more superior, more secure? One has to question these things, not just say out of hand, yes, it's so, or no, it's not so, but to observe it. Judging oneself or someone else and feeling something superior in that judging, something secure, or just, it's so habitual. Habits too provide security, strangely enough. Just to go with the habitual provides security, which we notice when a habit is being questioned or attacked, or we can't live in this habit right now because conditions have changed. Discovering how we depend on habits for our security. Habits of right and wrong judging. Can we look and listen for a moment without knowing whether it's right or wrong? The breathing, the sound of motor humming is not right or wrong, is it? It's just twittering. I don't have to take a position with regard to what is happening in this open listening. That's why it's open. I don't have to take a position. I don't have to be me knowing this and that. And that this is what we're clinging to. Being me, knowing this and that. Isn't it? The fact that the word airplane or lawnmower comes up need not be the taking of a position. It just comes automatically. The brain is programmed to name, to know. And there can be awareness of this program, naming and knowing, and it ends right there. But usually it doesn't end like there, because I am the one who names, I am the one who knows, and I'm the one who knows better or ought to know more. Or at least as much as others. And if I don't know as much as others, I'm inferior. And so on, it spins on well-trodden paths. Can that be awared? This network of knowing and judging and bringing oneself into the picture as me, an identity, me, who needs to be upheld and maintained, protected, furthered, made known. Is it so? It's to be looked at, to be questioned, to be discovered if it is so or not. And whether there can be a new listening moment which is what is there all the time before the brain springs in to interpret and connect with all the previous associations, which are in the billions, in the neural cells. Before that springs into action, there is a moment of pure perception. And that moment can expand in a seemingly miraculous way. For some reason, the brain not jumping right in by knowing and judging and expecting. And I'm saying the brain, but the brain is connected with this entire physique. There's nothing that is not connected with each other in this organism, and we with each other, and with the grass and sky, and sounds and birds. It's all one enormous connection. Which can be perceived as it is, without needing to take a stand about it. I don't have to take a stand. Does that sound radical? Because the brain may very quickly or immediately produce cases where I have to take a stand, and we'll talk about this. It'll come up in meetings. I'm just talking right now about sitting here and listening, and no need to take a stand for or against. Is it a tremendous relief? Just the wind in the trees, leaves rustling. The brain may produce an image. It has produced the word. We're talking with each other. But the word and the image of leaves trembling in the breeze need not destroy this openness of being here, because it is just one more happening in openness. The word, the picture. I don't have to be connected with it as taking a stand or owning it or producing it. That closes up the openness, because then it's me and mine and what I want you to regard me as, how I want you to treat me, with all the pain and the glamour that goes with it. Sometimes the brain really can't figure out what something is. For a moment, is this a dog? Is this a crow? Is this a frog? It's quack, 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 whatever. I can't imitate it so well. There it is. Don't have to know. And if we're all listening, all of us here listening for a moment, there's no knower or listener. There's just this. No divisions necessary. How marvelous. It's one open listening. If you think the mower shouldn't be and somebody else says, why not, then there's already some division. Because I think it's all right for somebody to mow on Sunday morning and somebody else thinks, no, it shouldn't be. Can we quickly, as a confrontation develops, stop and look and see whether it is at all necessary? to confront each other. Most of the things we confront each other on are not necessary. Some of them are. We'll have to go into this in groups and individual meetings. But the marvelous thing of coming here together on a green hillside with lots of blue sky all around it. For moments at a time, we don't need to take any stand. We need to be nobody special. That burden can drop away. And there's just footsteps and breathing and sounds and sensations, painful or joyful. Sitting together, sitting alone. One more thing that we look at in a first talk, because it's so important to look at it right at the beginning, is this whole matter of authority. We are raised with authority, the authority of the elders, the parents, the teachers, the older brothers and sisters. And at work, the supervisors. In church, the priests, high priests, priestesses. The ones, again, who know, are the experts. Onto whom this mind has learned from day one to project stuff, authority. An incredibly intricate, long training. We've all gone through, at least here, we who are here together. Maybe there's some place, some forlorn areas where there's no authority yet. Just recently saw a delightful movie. It was called, about a Coke bottle falling down. I don't remember the name of the movie. These people, The gods must be crazy. Amazing. A group of people living without authority until the Coke bottle drops down. Who's going to have it, own it, bang each other with it, and so forth. So we didn't grow up that way, none of us. There was an authority in all of our lives which we chafed under, which we rebelled against, or which we tried to placate, be good to. And then at some point, the potential or actual turnaround where we become the authority. Now we play this game, only we don't quite see it as a game. We take it very seriously. The power now that I have because I'm in a position of authority to tell others and to maybe make others be afraid of me. Mind my word, do what I say. I'm exaggerating, but there is some of that in all of us, isn't there? And it needs to be watched very carefully, very discerningly. Not just say, yes, I know, I'm also authoritarian, but watch it as it happens. As I expect somebody to do what I say and the reactions when this doesn't happen. Anger, hurt, you name it, you watch it. We can all watch it. If we all watched so precisely and discerningly, we wouldn't need talks, but we don't watch this way. words take over, saying, yes, I know she is, or he is, or I am. But that's not enough. Awareing as it happens, that's the important thing. So, what we talk about in the first talk is, are you projecting authority onto this person here in a light blue dress, gesticulating with the arms, the microphone to the side, including everything you've heard about her, read about her, remember from the past? Is there this amazing thing of projecting authority, which means an urge to follow, to adopt, to believe what somebody says, which is not what this work is about. This work is about looking and discovering for oneself, yet finding it very helpful when somebody points something out that is look-atable. Sometimes happens right in a talk, right in a meeting. Somebody points something out, not necessarily Toni, somebody else, and yes, it is so. You see it right then and there. Not that the person says something true, but that is true. It's seen, it's experienced, heard, felt, incited, on the spot. And in that, there is no need for authority, for creating authority, perpetuating authority, or fighting authority. There's no need to fight me, because I'm not trying to impose anything, no matter how intense I sound. That's a big disadvantage of sounding intense. Sounds as though I'm trying so hard to convince people of something. No. Conviction, convincing is for the birds. They won't even take it. If you see something that is so true, so real, so present, then there's a lot of energy rising to express it, to put it out. But that's not the same as trying to convince somebody of something. It's entirely different. And if you say, no, I don't see it this way, it's this way, then, well, let's not go back to what was in the talk. That's gone, that's history. Let's look now. And you'll find me ready to do that, I hope. Let go what was said and look now. That's the beauty, that's the strength, the clarity of it. We can look at any one moment freshly, alone and together. If there's openness, if there's no attachment to what I or you said in the past, let it fly like dandelion seeds in the wind. We can look now. Although it's quite all right to say what you said, and I remember you said such and such, let us look at it again, or I don't agree with it, or yes, that's fine, that's good, that's part of a retreat, part of the beauty of a flowing retreat. To move with the things and deepen them, deepen our looking and questioning and inciting. But beware of creating authority. I personally don't want it because it separates you from me. I've been through this trip years and years ago. Then we're not together. There's all kinds of networking going on in between. The role, the position. And if there's one thing that's beautiful and valuable, essential in living, is to be together without something in between, which is love. I don't mean sentimental love. I mean that energy of being together and exploring and listening together. And authority creation or authority fighting has no room in that. That's of our superficial ongoings. And this, a week of retreat is a huge question. Can we go beyond our superficial, programmed, conditioned ongoings which fill our days? Reaction to each other, hurting each other, getting hurt by each other. Is there something beyond which does not condemn this, fight it, but illuminate it, make it all transparent to the seeing eye, which is one eye for all of us? Not my eye and your eye. It is not a matter of opinions in that. Seeing is seeing, there's no opinion in it. No barrier, nothing in between. And yet we do come with, I think I said that last night, it hit me, how many different backgrounds, 42 people, 42 different backgrounds, personalities, idiosyncrasies, likes and dislikes. Amazing, here we all sit in one room, listening to voices, to voice and to birds. We do have different personalities, and somebody put it this morning. A person said, I haven't lived much with people. I've been busy on my own. And then there came some condition, living with another couple. I never knew how difficult it was. My buttons were pushed all the time, and I probably pushed their buttons, or one of the people's buttons, all the time. And it never occurred to me, that person says, to just sit with it and let it open up and show itself. There was involvement in it. So unless we do relate, are put into a situation where we have to relate with each other, we don't realize all the buttons there are. We are nothing but buttons, sometimes it seems, superficially speaking. And is it possible to live with all of these buttons and yet be in touch with something beyond buttons? Not deny it, not ignore it, but find a new way with it. Is that possible? I say yes, it is, but we have to find out for ourselves. And one cannot quite find this out in solitude. Although it's a marvelous thing to find periods of solitude, and for some people it's their whole life. I'm not judging. But most of us live in close relationship with one or more people, who are all differently conditioned, different needs, different whatever all. So, can it all be embraced? Not saying it as a sort of a hallmark nicety, I don't mean that. Embraced right here in listening, in a listening relationship that includes everyone and everything, no matter how great the differences and idiosyncrasies may be. So what is our relationship with each other? I always ask that. It is sort of a fossil left over from the time when I sort of had to make this statement all the time. I'm not a teacher. I don't make this anymore, although I just did. It's old stuff. I'm not concerned, and it doesn't come up hardly ever. Hardly ever. And yet the question remains, well, what is our relationship? If it's not a teacher-student relationship, what is it? My first response, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Here we are together, because I've been talking here for almost 40, 50 minutes. It's my function here. But these are still words. There's an immense amount of love in this work. Love and respect. Respecting the differences and the idiosyncrasies, not running roughshod over them. I never do. Maybe I do. Tell me if I do. Respecting our differences and yet trying to see through them. And both of us seeing through them, not just one of us. So there is a relationship of love and respect, and yet not two. Ultimately, truthfully, not two. Is that too complicated? Lots of material for bringing it up in meetings if you need to go over it again or go further with it or don't understand it. What just came to mind was somebody taped for me the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics, in which 5 different choirs in 5 different continents, I think, at least very far away places, sang at the same time the Ode to Joy. This, from the last movement of the 9th Symphony. Fantastic technological job to synchronize that, which the Japanese did in a perfect way. And having heard this and having sung it myself, just hearing this chorus, I don't know whether you know the words. It's usually sung in German, but it is, at one point it says, "Seid umschlungen Millionen," meaning be embraced all the millions of beings. Oh, it sent goose pimples up and down my arms and spine. The beauty and the power and energy of this music and the words, which were written by one of the greatest German poets. And yet this thing here is not about inspiration, it's about truth. We are one. And this metaphorical, this is not metaphorical, this embrace is not an inspirational word. What can I say? Actually, I cut that, the brain wants to put the whole thing out. I cut this thing short. Seid umschlungen Millionen, and then it goes on, ahnest du den Schöpferwelt? Do you have a sensing of the Creator? World, do you sense your Creator? Brothers, he addresses just half of them, brothers. Above the stars, Brüder überm Stern, there must be a loving Father. You don't need I stay with seid umschlungen. But the music is superb, without the words. we will end here for today.